Good afternoon, patrons and other people who are only slightly less awesome, but still awesome, just not as awesome as patrons, because they allow me to do this. So, I released a video last week-ish showing my process, and I had a couple people point out that there is apparently a feature that is in my Photoshop that is not in older versions, and that is if you go to Select, Color Range, I guess the fuzziness and range isn't here. I'm still hoping that the shadows is, and it just has a default. Um, but I'm going to show you an alternate method that actually might end up being my method of choice because I think it's slightly more simple than using the color range and modifying this to get the lower hills and the mountain peak selections. So we're going to show this real quick. Don't have much time, but I do want to get this out there so people can get on map making since there's so many of us stuck at home now. Let's get to it. This right here is just the background of uh, Wonder Draft. It's just the default paper colored green. I use it because I like to know that my assets blend well with Wonder Draft. So we're going to create a new layer here. This step is very similar to my last video. You're going to use render clouds, filter render, difference clouds, find something you like with a lot of white that looks good. Now, we're not going to duplicate layers quite yet right here. First thing we're going to do, we'll go to select and color range, and I'm going to leave it default and make sure shadows is selected and default, and I'm hoping, like I said, that this is still a thing, at least on CS6 and older versions. Now we're going to take that, delete. Now this one, this is the one that we're going to duplicate. So I keep double clicking. Duplicate that. Now the top layer, we're going to make a selection. We're going to go to select, modify, contract. This essentially does the same thing as the fuzziness and range. If you were to use the color select, you're shrinking the selection. I'm going to shrink it by 12 pixels. That's too much. Let's select, modify. We're going to contract it by, let's do 10. That's a little better. Now we're going to inverse and delete. So you won't see any difference now yet, but if you color the bottom one here, and I'm just using the color that pops really, really well, so you could see it. And as you notice, the one on top that we contracted with the selection for is smaller than the one on the bottom. So when you stylize emboss, we'll go with the 2 at 200. This is for the bottom layer here. And the top layer, we'll do the same thing. Filter, stylize, emboss. This one we'll do a 3, like 400. Now, if you need to get your peaks to look more like peaks, I mean, these just look like hills on top of hills at the moment. Turn on bevel and emboss, and boom. If you do turn this on, because I don't think it's set up how I have it by default, if you turn this on and you don't notice a difference, chances are it's just because of these settings. Make sure it's on inner bevel, soft chisel. Like if you're on hard chisel, you won't see. You're not going to notice hardly any difference whatsoever. Make sure it's on soft chisel. the depth, and this just controls how high you want your mountains to be. Direction up, size, also kind of the height of it. I'm not even sure what depth and size difference is, but play around with those two. Soften, I like mine harder, sharper peaks. Also, if you have all of this right and it still doesn't, you're not noticing them pop like this, it's probably because opacity for shadows is way low. If you turn that down, again, you're not going to see much difference. So the two keys to seeing, getting the results you want is having this on a soft chisel and having the shadow mode higher. And that's just going to darken the shadows. You can go as dark as you want. I think the darker, I think the darker that they are, the steeper that they probably look. We'll do 75. And the highlight mode it's not much of anything. You have a color overlay that's kind of overriding that. Then let's make these too white. Let's go make them a darker slate kind of color. And change this down to about 40. Now, there you can see, you're picking up the stuff that's underneath it. But we can do better. Bust out your eraser after you have this bevel and emboss. This is a brush that I made. It looks kind of like that. Maybe I'll get some brush sets out to you guys. I might even release my mountain asset brushes. This one is really good for tweaking your mountain ranges. So if you want more of those hills to show up underneath, you just delete underneath it. And you're going to pick up that green that we have under there. And right now I have the opacity at 100, but you can kind of change the flow and direction of your peaks by simply deleting. And it's as simple as that, really. And these look really, really sharp. But the erosion effect is really cool. Yeah, that erosion is nice. And you can play around with your bevel and emboss settings to kind of control that erosion. And keep going until you find something that you're looking for. If you don't want peaks that are so high and sharp, just take the size down. And keep it up if you want. And you can soften it too if you don't. There, that's a little more natural looking unless you have, a specific feature that you want specifically sharp. But that looked funny there, so you can get rid of that. And that's essentially it. That's another way to do it without messing with the fuzziness and range. Hopefully that helps. And as far as like this brush goes, do I even have a normal brush? Could probably do it with the hard round brush. Just make it smaller and maybe pointy, so you could rotate it a little bit. And we'll see if that, yeah, you could still get some same effects. So you don't need to have a special brush. I mean, it helps a little bit for shaping, but you can come in here and get the same. Send that way, send that way. I would probably use a soft one maybe if you don't have any special one, but I could release some special brushes or some of my favorites. Yeah, you just play around. Before you start messing with any of this, you could always duplicate the layer. That way, if you do something that you don't like, it's just, oh, I'll just copy that layer again. Yeah, like too low of opacity and you can't really, not gonna get the sharp changes that you want. And that's about it. There's not much to it, but you can get a lot of super cool effects. I still like my brush. I think that's my favorite. It has a little transparencies along the outside that kind of doesn't take away quite everything when you are erasing. But let's say you wanted to brush. You're on that same layer. The problem is you're not, I mean, you can get the texture, but you don't have that stylized emboss texture on anything you paint. So you'll get the contours, but you're not going to get the texture layer. So there are other ways that you can kind of get away with that too that I'll show you guys later by using masks and different things like that. But oops, I'm still on brush. Look at that. So there you go. That should be a way to get around that fuzzy range thing that's not on older versions. And this works out really well, and I think it gives you a little more control even to design features the way that you want them. And if you hide the hills, you get the peaks. So hopefully that is helpful and easy to follow. I wish I was better at tutorials, but as somebody who just learns by playing around with stuff, it's hard to explain things when you yourself don't even know exactly what you're doing. It's the same with me on the guitar. I can't teach people the guitar even though I could play it. I just say, no, I do this chord right here. It looks like this, and I have no idea what this is called. Alright, I think I'm done here. Right, there you go. That's a cool looking one. Yeah, I can sit here and do this for a long time, and I need to this week because I need to release another asset pack, especially since I'm working from home with all the virus stuff happening. But there it is. Oh, looks like a mess way out here, but looks much better when you're in close. So hopefully that helped. It's only a 15-minute video. Like I said, I don't have much time. I gotta find some other side stuff I need to get going to supplement the income from my work being shut down. So I need to get on that, but I wanted to address some of those concerns first. And if you guys have any other questions, just post on the comments, post in Patreon, send me a direct message on the Patreon, however you want to do it. I check it regularly and I try to respond as soon as I can. So with that, be safe, everybody. Don't get sick, and we'll catch you on the flip side.